for the next 35 minutes, I'm going to walk you through a very powerful framework that's going to help you, equip you. And I want you to use this over and over again. Now, before I get into this, a lot of folks ask me, well, what do we need to do in terms of sharing our thoughts or sharing what we know? A lot of us are, this room is full of experts. You guys are experts, yes? I mean, how many of you can just honestly say, without being egotistical, it's okay, you know what you're talking about? Just raise your hand. Like, honestly, look around the room, okay? And depending on the personality type that you are, I won't tell you mine, but most of you can actually guess, Here's the problem. You know what you're doing, and then you're like, my boss is an idiot. Right? Like, I need to run my own deal, okay, or something like that. And yet, here's the thing, right? For us as thought leaders, if people are paying you for what you know or for what you think, you are a thought leader. And if you don't share your thoughts, you have no marketing. So those of you who I've worked with, that's why I'm trying to push you to write or to podcast or to share. I'm trying to get what's in here out because you're really smart. And maybe you don't like writing or talking, or, well, then that's going to be a problem because we're not telepathic. So we need to figure something out, okay? But there's a way out, right? So maybe it's you hire somebody to work with you and to just basically interview and you get your stuff transcribed. We figure things out. Okay, so it's important that you share your thoughts. We need to know what's in here. And it would really be a shame if you took what's in here to the grave with you. You understand what I mean, right? We got to get this out. So if you want to speak or you want to consult or you want to coach or you just want to rally teams and you love where you're at, or you want to start your own company or rally the troops, be the leader of the frontline staff or whatnot, people still need to know what you're thinking. Whether you're launching a nonprofit or feeding people or feeding the poor, people still need to know what you're thinking, right? Now, a lot of the time people ask me, how often or what do I need to say? So I'm going to give you 3 things really quickly, all right? And I believe that these 3 things are a very practical framework in terms of understanding, like, what do I say? What will actually be helpful in terms of getting what's in my head out? So number 1, the content you share, okay, and growing your influence has got to be full of value, okay? You've got to consider what kind of value you are giving to people, right? Be thoughtful, right? So many people think, it's interesting. I'm working with a client right now. They're a big leadership organization. And they felt like all we need to do is post pictures of our events on Instagram. So that's what'll look good. And they kind of have like this person on a stage like this. And the only caption is, check, not valuable content. It doesn't say anything, okay? So this morning so far, I talked to you about emotion, eliciting emotion. When you share content, what I mean by value is it has to elicit emotion. That does not mean it has to be a political rant. It doesn't mean it has to tick people off or be controversial for the sake of being controversial. It needs to elicit emotion because human beings are emotional creatures. So that's why we watch cat videos and watch pictures of puppies, because it makes us feel something. And then what do people do? Something, they hit like, right? It's got to be value. Number 2, the next determiner is volume, right? How much, my slide got messed up, okay. What is your body of work? What is your body of work? When people come to your podcast and say, you got to check out my podcast, and they go check out your podcast and you have 1 episode, you're not getting them. They're not coming back. That's why Jody, who will speak to us tomorrow, will talk about why you should launch with 3. Because volume matters, right? Volume, okay? 3rd, hold on, let me all do this, is velocity. How often are people hearing from you? How often are you sharing your thoughts? If you are sharing it once a month and only 20% of your audience or your staff listen, you're not going to get much traction. Does it make sense? This sounds counterintuitive. When I work with businesses and I ask them how often are they touching base with their audience, I actually turn up the velocity. We email them once a month. Oh, good luck. That's why you have no money. That's why you have no donations. Not enough velocity. Okay? Social media has done what? Gotten us used to hearing from people time and time again, right? And so the stats say if you run a business or a nonprofit, if 20% of your people open your emails, that's actually really good. And that's like crazy, isn't it? 20%. 20 out of 100, right? That's just like, ugh. What do the other 80% do? They're not listening to you. So you've got to hit them in other ways, right? You got to hit them in other ways, right? Aman's here. He's from Tune Technology. They build technology for all these huge companies, does stuff that's so complex that I don't totally understand it. But they talk about how are your customers engaging with your brand. We can actually help you figure that out, right? Who's using Instagram? How are they finding you? Snapchat, what is it, right? So value, volume, velocity. If you want to take this into account in terms of marketing, this is what you have to have a plan around, right? Am I adding value? Over the course of time, is there a body of work? Is there a volume of work that people can say, wow, this guy's been at it, this gal's been at it for a while. They must know what they're doing. And how often does it come out? How often do people hear from me, okay? So value, volume, and velocity, we have to figure all this out in terms of like what works for you, okay? What works for you. I dare say once a month is not enough, okay? I dare say once a month is not enough. Now, Mike, that's too often. Well, it's not if it's full of value, right? If it's good, people will listen, right? People will listen. Years ago, when I was working that marketing job I showed you the picture of, here's how I increased, here's one of the ways that I increased their traffic and their lead gen. All we did was send mail like crazy amounts of mail. I hired Jason, who you'll hear from tomorrow, to design the flyers, and I just told the boss, I'm like, we just need to mail stuff like crazy. And they're like, this is expensive. Like, that's all we're gonna, this doesn't even say anything. It's okay. Because what I wanted people to see was the logo over and over and over again. Over and over and over again. And I wanted to keep top of mind awareness. So every time they saw that logo, threw it in the trash. Guess what? Next week they got another piece of mail, saw the logo, threw it in the trash, over and over again. By week 12, when they realized they needed to send their kid to get SAT training because they're not going to go to college because they're playing video games all day, who'd they think of? The company whose logo they saw over and over and over again. All right, so velocity is important. I share all that to say, okay, to bust the myth that you're thinking like, well, if people hear from me too often, they'll get sick of me. They'll just ignore a few emails, but they need to hear and see your name, okay? Now, as we walk into this framework, I want you to understand this really big thing. This will change everything, okay? You are not the hero, you are the guide. So I asked you in the first session, who do you have to become in order to serve the people you want to serve? You must become a guide, okay? Now I know that sounds a little counterintuitive because when I ask you, who knows what you're talking about, you all raise your hand, right? You're like, I'm good at what I do. So I'm gonna walk you through this framework. It's called StoryBrand, and we're gonna take some real life examples, but let me flesh this out for you. Think about the classic stories that we read or watch in movies, right? There's this formula, and it's this. There is a hero in the story, and this hero, the movie gets pretty boring if the hero does not have a conflict, right? So there's always a problem that the hero's facing. Randy, can we delete the one? Because I think the formatting's getting all jacked, okay? If you get a chance, okay? So there's a problem. The hero has a problem. Frodo Baggins having a party, drinking beer, shooting fireworks with his friends. Along comes a problem. His uncle has found a ring that can end the world, right? And he's like, uh-oh, this is a big deal. And in the movies, we see these heroes and they meet a guide, right? They meet a guide. In Frodo's case, it was Gandalf, the wizard. And this guide has a plan. And the plan is, listen, Frodo, you got to throw the ring into the volcano. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to assemble a team around you. There's an elf who shoots arrows. He's really hunky looking, okay? And there's a, some really short guy with an axe and a big beard. And There's a really suave-looking ranger guy with a nice beard, and all these other folks. And we're going to assemble a team, and you guys are going to go destroy this ring. And the guide calls the hero to action. We're to do this. And if you follow the plan that I set out, there will be victory. If you don't, we will all die. Have you ever noticed that in any movie that you watch, it's life and death? I mean, even if you're watching a romantic comedy, it's like life and death, right? Like the world's going to end if Tom Hanks doesn't meet Meg Ryan in Sleepless in Seattle. Oh my gosh, right? And you're like, that's not life and death, but that's what moves people. So when I asked you guys in the first session, what is the injustice, and you feel like you're dialing it up too much, come on, I'm talking about frontline workers in a hotel. It's not life and death. You got to make it about life and death.